Hello and welcome to the big picture. The 14-month-old Nawaz Sharif government in Pakistan is facing its worst crisis, with protesters belonging to the Imran Khan-led Tehreek-e-insaaf party and Tahirul Qadri-led Pakistani Awami Tehreek laying siege to Sharif's house. The protests, which have turned violent, seeking the ouster of the Pakistani Prime Minister, has shaken the entire country. India is also watching closely the developments there. Nawaz Sharif, meanwhile, has convened a joint session of the parliament and is planning to hold it for the next 1 week. He hopes that with the parliament's support, he would be able to overcome the crisis. The question is, will he be able to hold on? We will discuss all this today with Vivek, Katju, former ambassador, Commodore Uday, Bhaskar, Director, Society for Policy Studies, Rana, Banerjee, Security Analyst and former Special Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, Vinod, Sharma, Political Editor, Hindustan Times, and on the phone line from Islamabad is Imtiaz, a political analyst and senior journalist. Welcome to all of you. Imtiaz, I would like to come to you first. Today there has been some developments in Pakistan. The joint session of the parliament is being held, and the PIT, the Imran Khan party's leader and the member of the National Assembly, has resigned. What does it mean?
Well, there were chiding, taunting, and caution, warning to the Prime Minister during the joint sitting. So it achieved one major purpose, and that was the unanimity and the unity of the civilians vis-a-vis the military establishment. They all got together in support of the parliament, of the current system, saying that any illegal, unconstitutional assault on the system of the parliament would not be tolerated, and that they stand united in support of the system. On the other hand, they also cautioned the Prime Minister that he has to get into an inclusive decision-making and governance mode rather than treating the parliament as a personal family fiefdom, and that that he has to also address the grievances by the opposition as well as take care of the people's problems, the grassroots problem. So in that way, this was a good expression of solidarity with the civilian system in the face of opposition, which most ruling party parliamentarians believed was getting some support from the military establishment or sections of the military establishment. And the joint sitting that began today is likely to continue for some time. Basically, I would say has come as a very, very strong signal of political unity to whoever is trying to disrupt and destabilize the system.
Okay, that's very interesting. So, I mean, is it too early to say that both Imran Khan and Tahirul Qadri have been isolated now politically?
Well, I wouldn't say that Imran Khan has been isolated. He fortunately joined Dr. Tahirul Qadri, who is not a real stakeholder in the entire system. Imran Khan's party bagged second largest number of votes in the last election with good representation in the national parliament. So from that perspective, I don't think political force can be isolated. However, he stands isolated in the sense that he was making demands which did not make sense, including actually one didn't make sense, and that was the resignation of the Prime Minister based on his allegations of electoral fraud in the elections last year. So that one demand basically has made him a little bit unpopular and has also won him a lot of criticism from the civil society, from the media, from mainstream political parties. And the government basically probably would have to engage him, reach out to him, to persuade them not to resign from the national parliament as well as the provincial parliaments. And he has now promised that in a couple of hours he would make an important announcement. He also has possibly the door of negotiations open by just announcing that he is ready to receive a parliamentary delegation that is going to see him in a couple of hours. So possibly that would be a window of opportunity both for Imran Khan as well as for the government to find an amicably acceptable way out of the current crisis. And that will basically isolate Dr. Tahirul Qadri, who has been making quite reasonable demands.
Okay. Mr. Katju, Imtiaz has given us a very clear picture of what's happening there. How would you look at it? Do you think that the Prime Minister has played a very smart card by convening a joint session of the Parliament and getting this kind of support?
But this is not the first time that Parliament has supported him. A couple of weeks ago, as this crisis began, he got the support of all political parties in Parliament for the continuance of constitutional democracy. To my mind, the real story in this crisis is not what is taking place within the political class, but the use of Imran Khan and Qadri by the army to try to put Nawaz Sharif in his place and try to signal to Pakistan, to India and to the world that as far as the security policies of Pakistan are concerned, they are and will remain within the control of the Pakistan army. Now, it is a fact that for many months there have been problems between the army and Mr. Nawaz Sharif. And in some ways, Mr. Nawaz Sharif has tried to dig his heels in, and that was not countenanced by the army. So, what the army has shown is that they are the premier institution in Pakistan's public life, and that was demonstrated when, in an extraordinary step, the Prime Minister approached the army to mediate or facilitate the resolution of this crisis. Now, that was truly an extraordinary step. And it is at that stage that the army stepped in.
But Nawaz Sharif said that the army has offered to mediate. Well, there was a problem there.
That was very swiftly denied by the army. But one more point. Where in a democratic system does the army, after a meeting of the corps commanders, issue a statement which is directly political? So the lesson as an Indian analyst that I draw from these developments is that, as I wrote today in an article, when push comes to shove, the only men who matter in Pakistan are the men in khaki.
You have been saying this for a long time. Rana Banerjee, would you agree with what Mr. Katju is saying as far as the army is concerned? And do you think that what Imtiaz was saying, that the coming together of the civilian, people, all the political parties coming together, will this be seen as something that how will the army look at this?
Well, you see, I wouldn't entirely agree with this analysis. It hasn't happened that naturally. The crux of the matter is that if the violence can be contained to a low key and is seen to be provoked by the two demonstrating organizations, then Nawaz Sharif will manage to sit pretty, so to speak, and he's already managed to rope in all the elected legislators from both houses of parliament. Now, you see, after this, the second most important thing that has happened is Javed Hashmi's revelations yesterday. He stole the thunder from Imran Khan by talking about this pre-scripted phenomenon and how Imran had assumed that everything will fall in place, including the judiciary giving a verdict and all that. This forced the army yesterday night to issue a second press release where they have denied that the first press release implied a support indirectly of PTI and PAT. So now I think Nawaz's position has improved slightly. And if now the violence...
To that extent, in fact, though it has damaged Imran Khan, it has helped Nawaz Sharif.
Imran is considerably damaged, and I would even go as far as to say that afterwards, if this problem is resolved, then he will lose considerably politically, and in that sense I don't entirely agree with Mr. Imtiaz Gul. He will lose ground. But of course, the crux, as I said, would be how much more violence and stemming from whom, placed at whose door, whether the political handling of it or the law and order machinery or the provocators.
Okay. Uday Bhaskar, some people are calling it a virtually a civil war in Pakistan. Some people are saying that there's a virtual mutiny and things like that. But do you think that we can dub it as a civil war or mutiny, or you think this is overstated?
No, I think neither description, that of a civil war or a mutiny, would be applicable as of today as we speak. Yes, there was a fair amount of what might be described as anarchy below a certain median, and both Imran Khan and Tahirul Qadri were definitely encouraging their supporters to do what they did, which is why we had 3 people killed and hundreds injured. But I just want to develop two of the points made both by Vivek and by Rana, that if you look at the sequence of events over the last 2.5 weeks from August 14th onwards, I think the Javed Hashmi revelation in a way exposes what might be described as the deeper pattern or the deeper game that was at play, that the army for its own reasons had decided to engage in what could best be described as high-level brinkmanship by tacitly endorsing or supporting Imran Khan and Tahirul Qadri to do what they did. And in a way, it was a battle between the two Sharifs, Nawaz Sharif as Prime Minister and Rahil Sharif as the Chief of the Army Staff, because the army has been smarting, I think, on 3 very, very major developments. One is the manner in which General Musharraf's trial is proceeding. We have the whole history of October 1999, when then General Musharraf had deposed the same Prime Minister, Mr. Nawaz Sharif. We have the Hamid Mir case, the television journalist, and the fact that the Prime Minister supported him publicly. And then, of course, this whole way of dealing with the Taliban. So I think the Pakistani commentary was that the army was trying to, in a way, teach Mr. Nawaz Sharif a lesson. And they thought they had succeeded. But I agree with what Rana was saying just now, that as of this afternoon, and consequent to the meeting between former President Zardari and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, I think the situation of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has marginally improved, but I think he has lost his credibility. What he said when he was elected last year in June, that the army will go back to the barracks. I think that is not likely to happen. The army will remain in control of the crucial security policies that Mr. Katju mentioned, namely nuclear weapons, support to terror groups, and the relations with both India and Afghanistan. That is how I would summarize the current status or situation in Pakistan. Girish?
Vinod, all of them are saying the army is still under control and things like that. And the fact of the matter is the army chief has said the other day that, we would like the political and constitutional means to be adopted to tackle this situation, and we would not like to be part of it. How seriously can anybody take that kind of statement?
You see, you have to factor in 3 things. One, the broad political consensus as it exists in Pakistan today. It existed before the joint session. It has been consistent, has been a constant for many, many months, and since the PPP ruled for 5 years, full 5 years, and handed over power after defeat, in a very peaceful process. Let us not ignore that factor. And I think that generally the people of Pakistan, and I would say the civil society at large, I'm not talking about the fringe groups, have come to like that arrangement. Now, other point is that the constitution as it stands amended today leaves no scope unless it is abrogated or suspended for an army intervention of the kind that we have seen in the past. And it leaves very little room, and the judiciary too has gotten to like the way it conducted itself over the past few months. It had Mr. Musharraf sent to the barracks, if I may say so. Musharraf was sent to the barracks by the army, by the judiciary, and under pressure of the civil society. So I think that when Mr. Nawaz Sharif was dreaming, quote unquote, of sending the army to the barracks, he wasn't, sort of really overstating the case, in the sense that because the kind of majority he got and the vote percentage he got in Punjab was very significant. Now, and now, after having considered these three, let us move to why the army is unhappy. And can Raheel Sharif was, when he was appointed, called a peacetime general, because he was more of a doctrine maker than a guy who sort of set up theatres of war, in the sense that we have seen earlier
theatres
chiefs.
of coup.
And Raheel Sharif was picked up and he superseded 3-4 people when he was made army chief. So he has to establish his leadership in the army and can't be seen as tied to the apparent strings of Mr. Nawaz Sharif. But Mr. Nawaz Sharif has the glorious history of having fought 4 army chiefs and yet become prime minister the third time. And so I would say that you must render unto Caesar what is Caesar's as of today. And if an election is forced upon him tomorrow, he is not going to accept Tahirul Qadri's, formula of an interim national government. He may rather go with Imran Khan's demand that there be fresh elections. And if there are fresh elections today, he stands the best chance of winning and returning to power. So, yes, a midterm election, the kind of effort that goes in fighting an election and the risks therein when you don't have the army entirely on your side. If the elections are fair tomorrow and the army stands by and ensures that the elections are fair, Mr. Nawaz Sharif will come back to power. But the army would not like that to happen. The army will not like that to happen because that will make him real powerful.
Absolutely. But we are jumping the gun, I think, whether we can
No,
expect.
I'm only saying that.
Mr. Katju, do you envisage that kind of a situation? What Imtiaz Gul was saying earlier, he says that the fact is that this that there's going to be a parliamentary delegation which will be meeting in a couple of hours with Nawaz Sharif. Then there may be some kind of a window of opportunity. You think that the army, despite what the strong views you hold about army being everything in Pakistan, you think there is still a room for Nawaz Sharif to regain some strength?
No, look, what is the army's interest in this?
What is the army's interest?
I don't think it is to remove Nawaz Sharif.
It is okay.
That is my first point.
Right.
They don't want to remove him. They want that on matters which are of importance to them, they have the final say. And these are matters of policy, security and foreign policies. That has traditionally been with them and they are loath to relinquish any role there. Second, take the Musharraf case. Musharraf has been a source of the greatest embarrassment to the army. It's well known that the former army chief, General Kayani, and his colleagues tried their level best, as did many others, to prevent General Musharraf from returning to Pakistan on the eve of last year's election. They failed because of Musharraf's obstinacy. Thereafter, Musharraf was digging his heels in and was unwilling to leave Pakistan when the army wanted him to leave. Once they persuaded Musharraf and he said that he was willing to go, Nawaz Sharif dug his heels in. So, this has been a matter of deep distress to the army generals because they've had a lot of explaining to do vis-a-vis the Pakistan soldiery. So, on this point, I think if Nawaz Sharif continues to be intransigent, then I am afraid the army will not take it lying down, and 6 months down the road, we might have a recurrence. And on that occasion,
recurrence of a similar phenomenon, what's happening?
A recurrence of a serious effort to destabilize Nawaz Sharif again, and on that occasion, there will be major question marks whether the army wishes him to continue or not. At this time, I think they were trying to tell him that, look, we have certain cards, don't play around with us on matters of importance.
Would you agree with that? This was just a pinprick by the army.
Can I draw attention to this panel of the fact that Chaudhry Nisar, who is the Interior minister
Interior
belongs to a very prominent army family. A minister in Mr. Nawaz Sharif's government is a kind of guru in soldiery of Rahil Sharif. And Shahbaz Sharif has traditionally kept good relations with the army, his brother. So I don't think that this current regime is totally isolated from the army establishment. And surely there must be channels working between this government and the army. Yes, the biggest problem the army perhaps had, in my perception, with the Nawaz Sharif government was their frontal support to the young group consequent to Hamid Mir's incident and the allegations that the attack on him was planned by the ISI. That was perhaps one thing which rankled the most the Pakistani army. Not as much his visit to India. Surely he had discussions. He waited 3 days before saying yes. And I don't think he would be undertaking that adventure from his standpoint without sounding the army out. Insofar as India-Pakistan is concerned, well, because there is to it a huge security implication, army has a natural role. Even in our case, the army is acquiring a role when we are discussing Siachen or when we are discussing other issues.
Please don't, Vinod, bhai, for God's sake, don't compare the Pakistan army with the Indian army.
No, let me, please. This is not, we are having a serious discussion, Ambassador. And I request you to patiently hear me. I am not shouting at you. What I am saying is that we have a democratic regime which has, to which the army reports, but we too factor in the army's viewpoint when it comes to serious security issues. That's a simple point I'm making. I'm not saying they're dictating terms to us.
Rana Banerjee, are you convinced that all this is happening, that the TIP, the PAT, all that they have been involved in, indulging in, has been with the tacit support of the army, and now army is having second thoughts about what they have done?
It is possible, but I am not fully convinced because there is not enough evidence. And as Vinod rightly pointed out, Chaudhry Nisar Ali gave a press statement saying that whoever may be the mastermind, the army is not behind it. But there are reasons to believe that there are sections within the top collegiate leadership of the army generals who are unhappy with Nawaz, and this message has come through, and Nawaz would be learning his lessons. In this context, again, Vinod has rightly brought out that Rahil Sharif is considered to be one of the docile generals who's been very close to General Abdul Rahman Baloch, who's Minister for Border Affairs.
Exactly.
And it was his okaying of Rahil's credentials which made Nawaz select him
as the army chief,
as over to other seniors. More than that, you see what has happened in the Corps Commanders Conference day before yesterday night, from what I could make out from the media, that among the dissenters was possibly the DGISI, Zaharul Islam, who wanted a stronger message to be conveyed. And earlier, Rahil has been toying with the idea, again, brought this point out, of bringing his men in when the October reshuffle takes place, when the peer group commanders phase out. Now, there is an option available to him to give extension both to Zaharul Islam and to the Corps Commander in Peshawar, because he is dealing with the FATA operations. But whether extensions would be given or not, whether Rahil would bring in his new men, remains to be seen. As regards the DGISI's appointment, the Prime Minister has a role. Regarding other corps commanders, Rahil is free to bring his own people in. So this will have to be watched very carefully in October. It's already September.
So what you're trying to say is that the government and the army needs to work together if it has to get its own...
They would need to be in sync. And in between all this, there is this political imbroglio where, the two stray, demonstrators, groups have become so virulent in their public profile. So I think this is going to boomerang on the protesters, isolate them a little bit, and Nawaz might be able to ride the day.
Nawaz, Uday, Bhaskar, do you also get the feeling that there is a possibility of Nawaz Sharif overcoming this crisis as of now?
Yeah, personally, I would also subscribe to the view that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has played his cards as deftly as is possible, given the challenges that he has had to face in a political sense. And the estrangement with the army, as the other panelists have brought out, is also, I think, something that he has had to deal with. But my own assessment is that it is unlikely that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif will resign. He has made this statement as emphatically as is possible. But if you look at the statement which has come out from the army, the public relations department of the army, they have asserted that they are in support of the democratic process and the constitution.
Right.
But there is no suggestion that they are committed to the continuation of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. So my own reading is that there has been, I use the word brinkmanship in the past, that both sides have played the equivalent of a high stakes game. And I think the army, I'd like to repeat this, in their own way wanted to teach a lesson to Mr. Nawaz Sharif about which are the red lines. And I still am of the view that Javed Hashmi's press conference and what he had to say about the army giving a certain signal to Imran Khan, I mean, they went to the extent of saying that there would be a new election in September and the army would allow or encourage Imran Khan emerging as the elected leader. So I think all this has to be factored in, but Mr. Nawaz Sharif is no pushover. He has had the experience of dealing with 4 army chiefs, as one of our panelists has pointed out, and he has survived. And I think this is the other aspect, that the current ecosystem in Pakistan, which includes civil society, the judiciary, and perhaps even sections of the top leadership of the army, are not in favor of the equivalent of a hard coup or a bloodless coup like General Musharraf did, but maybe the Bangladesh model, a soft coup, that you cleanse the system of all quote-unquote corrupt politicians, and then you bring in a more pliable political constituency and allow the leaders to be elected from there. So I think this is the contestation between the army and the civilian elected representatives who are standing foursquare behind Mr. Nawaz Sharif, with the exception of the PTI led by Mr. Imran Khan. Girish?
Okay, Vinod, quick last words.
You
mean a soft coup, is there a possibility of that, or you think you think Nawaz will ride this over?
No, there is nothing like a soft coup, frankly. Nawaz Sharif, if you know his temperament, is not going to be lame duck prime minister. He will not continue as like lame duck prime minister. And he will rather take the risk of a fresh election if he is sought to be reined in beyond a point. Because mind you, if he is able to succeed on the economic front, and for that also perhaps he needs the army's support to some extent. And if the army seems to be coming in the way of his economic policies or his efforts to repair the economy, then the army would also stand to be becoming unpopular. Mind you, Javed Hashmi spent 7 years in jail against Musharraf, and his disclosures have not merely sullied the image of Imran Khan, but also the Pakistan army. Make no mistake about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very quickly, sir. India, last words, Mr. Katju. India cancelling the foreign secretary level talks, has that in any way affected Nawaz Sharif in either way, positively or negatively?
No, I think this...
In handling what is happening?
No, the internal situation has had a dynamic which is entirely domestic.
Right.
I don't think that the foreign secretary level talks or the cancellation has had any bearing there. But just one short point.
Right. Very, very quickly, sir.
Look, the army has achieved its objectives. The objective was wounding Mr. Nawaz Sharif politically just 14 months into his history.
Okay. Mr. Banerjee, very quick last word.
I'll just flag the joker in the pack, the new Chief Justice. He is hearing all the parties and he has said that we will not leave this problem unsolved. So tell us what you want or how you can solve this problem, and then we will give the final verdict. Now that's a bit puzzling.
Intriguing. Okay. I think on that note, we need to end. The last point which Rana Banerjee made, I hope if we had made it earlier, we could have discussed it a little more, but we'll have to wait and watch what's happening. Some of the panelists feel that Nawaz Sharif will ride over this crisis. Some feel that he may not. We will have to wait and watch what will happen. But whatever is happening in Pakistan is not too good for the entire region. Thanks to all my guests, Uday, Bhaskar, Rana Banerjee, Vivek, Katju, Vinod, Sharma, and Imtiaz who had joined us earlier from Islamabad. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.